Hello everybody, thanks for joining us today. My name is Clementine and I will be your host. Please note that we cannot hear you as you are all on mute. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat window during the presentation. We will address any question during an open Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Okay, so let's begin with an introduction of today's speaker. Oliver, would you like to start?
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you, Clementine. Thanks everyone for joining the webinar today. So yes, my name is Olivier Reynaud. I'm based in Boston, and I'm a technical sales lead at GSX and Microsoft specialist as well, more on the Exchange side. And I'm here with Gary.
Hi, my name is Gary Steer. I am probably 3 or 4 months in with GSX now. I'm a Microsoft Certified Master on Exchange Server and a Microsoft MVP as well. And prior to coming to GSX, I actually spent a large portion of my career doing Domino to Exchange migrations. So it's the topic that we're talking about today kind of is something that is near and dear to me.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. So just to explain you a little bit what we will cover today. So yes, we'll focus on coexistence. So first we want to define a little bit why there's a need for coexistence, what's available out there for coexistence to introduce that topics. Then we'll go through very specific use cases that have happened in coexistence. So actual things that broke and what was the impact, why they happened, what was the root cause. Then we'll discuss, can we prevent these issues and see, answer to that question and see how. We'll discuss more in depth about the offering, what GSX can do in terms of the coexistence with our Coexistence package. And then we'll conclude by explaining a little bit GSX for those of you that don't know us very well. And please send us all your questions through the webinar. We'll make sure to answer them at the end in a Q&A session. Okay, so let's start with the first topic, the need for Coexistence package.
So I think anyone who's been in the middle of a Domino to Exchange migration, so maybe call it Lotus Nodes, IBM Nodes, the terms of change depending upon who you're talking to and what they got used to in the past. But when we go between Domino and Microsoft effectively, so Exchange Server on premises or Office 365, we find ourselves in a scenario where the content, first off, converting the content is really can be complicated. There are a lot of things you can do in Domino that you just cannot do in Microsoft Exchange. Not that they were necessary, not that they were critical. I really found a lot of variance in my customers in terms of what they use Domino for, but Domino to me was always a development platform that could send mail. And as a result, you would find a lot of things it could do. But because it was a development platform that could send mail, the mail that's leaving someone's mailbox may not be something that arrives very happy on the Microsoft Exchange side. It could look, have a nice table, look pretty, have a nice format to it. When it gets to Exchange, it is barely readable, and vice versa. Some of the things sent from Exchange can come in a format that shows up as a obscure attachment on the Domino side. So we need we need coexistence for, first off, mail flow remediation, taking a look at mail traveling from one side of the platform to the other and determining, is the content in here something that can go to Exchange or can go to Domino, and if not, what can I do to fix that? The second function that coexistence does is it really focuses on making sure when you launch a new Outlook window and you're doing a new meeting, or if, similarly if I'm doing this inside of the Notes client, and I want to add 3, 4, 5 people, and I need to find a time that works, you'll go ahead, you'll put their times in, you'll look at a time, and it'll actually call the server and say, okay, here's when John is open, 1 to 2, and then 5 to 6. That function works great on Exchange. It works great on Domino. The unbelievable variance between the way that Exchange thinks about calendars and the way Domino thinks about calendars, it actually well, it amazes me what these vendors can do. And there are 2 large vendors out there. Binary Tree makes a package, and Quest makes a package. We can work with either, but the ability for these vendors to take this calendaring format that is really almost unrelated in many circumstances and make it to where I can add a user from Domino and a user from Exchange and find out when we happen to have a time slot open that I can schedule a meeting, that in and of itself I always found to be pretty incredible. So COEX sits in the middle, and it's really designed for that purpose. It's designed to give us real-time interoperability for mail flow and for calendaring. The term COEX doesn't necessarily apply to the actual migration of data. Each vendor also makes a data migration package that works with their own coexistence package, so it wouldn't be for moving the data. It's for dealing with the point in time where you've got people on both sides of the divide. Maybe I'm moving my users in waves, or we've got line of business applications. I have a lot of customers that we moved their mail years ago, but their Domino servers are still there because they built some incredibly powerful applications in Domino that it just doesn't make sense to move. So when we look at how does COEX work? Well, there's not really enough time to cover that in this session. Quite honestly, I know the vendors would protect their intellectual property very, very heavily in here. In basic terms, it's a translator, but it amazes me. It amazes me what the vendors are able to do and how they're able to take that data, convert it, and move it across. The reason I kind of make a joke about magic, this is not simple. I mean, I may say in the simplest terms it's a translator. This software is highly complex. There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of inner components, pieces that run on the Domino side, pieces that run on the Windows side, pieces that are all over the place. It is not your everyday package. They're truly very incredible with what they can do. But I kind of make the magic joke in there. I probably should have said, black magic, but if you watch any of these, magic movie franchises, mess with black magic, things can go wrong. A lot of power, but things happen. And as we talk about the things that can happen, quite honestly, that's not meant against any vendor. It has nothing to do with that. The sheer complexity of what it takes to make a Domino to Exchange migration work, all of the moving pieces, every time we add another moving part, we increase complexity, and from pure mathematics, more complexity means the potential for something to go wrong, and it's that simple.
Yeah, I think that's the base in a lot of things in IT. When you build complex things to make systems interact, then there's a lot of components involved and it can break. So. Yes, so can you explain to us a little bit what happens when those COEX environments break? Like what really happens? I think you have some specific use cases.
Yeah, so these are actually use cases of mine, and we can jump right into the first one here, Liv. So this one, this actually was, interestingly, the first customer that this use case caused me to meet GSX. 4 or 5 years ago now, initially. I had done this migration. Things were going great. We were halfway through this migration. It was a very, although the user count isn't high, we had some really specific requirements. A lot of data requirements, a lot of calendaring requirements, litigation requirements. I remember this project was more complex than some of the ones I did that were 10 times the size. We had a lot of complexity, and it was going great. Things were really smooth. We were having a good time. We hit the 50% mark. I was running a consulting team for a partner that specialized in Domino migrations at the time, and by the customer and myself, we agreed that it would be a nice weekend to take off because we had hit 50%. And that Saturday night, while everybody was off, the COEX platform stopped moving mail at 9 p.m. We found out about 11:30. My entire team was off. I don't know where they were, but they weren't responsible to answer phones. So I was working with the customer admin who had also been out that evening. At this point, it was about 11:30 at night, trying to get this COEX environment back up and running by 1 a.m. Because the company was launching $1 million production run, and they used to use, and maybe they still do, but they had this application that would send mail that had a Domino form in it, so it was application-based mail, I would say it. Over, to the Exchange side, you'd click it, it would just make the Notes client open, but you had to get a copy of the mail, and it wasn't moving. as we dug into this particular case, you know, we actually never really figured out why mail stopped moving. It wasn't caught because the coexistence packages have their own places where they can queue mail or they can hold mail, and it was not inside of a standard Domino mail.box, you know, so it was not inside of a standard transport queue. As a result, you know, the basic monitoring that this client was using didn't catch this. They had a really I'm going to say free, but that's just recollection from many years ago, package doing some of the monitoring, and it was not really designed to watch customized, specialized, you know, Domino databases for pieces of this mail flow. We really never figured out the cause here. The best we got to, we know that the VMware host, so the actual physical machine, was really at capacity. The virtual machines were acting a little weird. And that's probably an understatement. I think that they did a lot of weird things, but technical term there too. But ultimately, we got it running again, moved it to a different VM. Don't know if shutting it down and moving it kicked the processes better, but we didn't know what the real issue was here. And we were almost up against you know, literally $1 million impact to the customer by the time it went out. Interestingly, too, you know, our team had a 4-hour SLA, so by the time they called us, it was already 11. We were on the phone with them by 11:30. You know, we didn't even have the full 4 hours we were contractually agreed to fix the problem. It just, you know, it took too long for people to even see something wasn't working.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that first use case. So let's jump to the.
So, you know, we've got some other, you know, possibilities. Now, in that particular case, the customer had one coexistence installation, and depending upon the vendor, there can be some Domino components, some Domino servers, maybe. There are Windows servers involved in either scenario, depending on, you know, with a binary tree and Quest doing some tasks, but. There was another customer that had really an incredibly complicated, large, powerful environment. You know, 16 servers, 4 redundant configurations out of 4 data centers around the world. This thing was, you know, designed to never go down. Technically, I guess it didn't. You know, but about 20% into the migration, there was somebody noticed that they hadn't got internet mail in 3 days. And so they started looking into it and realized that there was actually no mail going from Domino to Office 365 for 3 days. It's you know, surprising, but these kind of things happen.
Yeah, how come nobody noticed for like 3 days? That's
Well, yeah. So you know what happens here is in these migrations, and as I mentioned, calendaring is really tricky. So one of the things you do to try to make this easier on, you know, the people that are being cut over, you try to move them with the people they work with the most. So reality is, if I do 90% of my email internally, I might not notice that something from outside of my team doesn't make it to me. Your team was moved with you. The people you work with are moved with you because of the complexities in calendaring, and as a result, you can end up with these gaps in visibility. You know, the natural order of a migration creates a gap in visibility at times, if you will. So you really need to be watching from a different angle to make sure you're not missing it. You know, interestingly, this environment, you know, the first case, the software didn't fail per se. It may have been hardware. In this case, when we dug into it, what actually took place is there was a really, really minor change on Domino. That minor change in Domino, you know, the way that this environment was built, there was Office 365 in the mix. There was an Exchange server acting, you know, performing the role as a hybrid system, if you will. So really, you know, bridging the on-premises environment and providing mail transport is the easiest way to say this. But the mail left Domino, went to Exchange. This one tiny change in Domino caused Exchange and some transport rules the customer had put in place to apply a custom X header. So just put you know, if you open a mail message, in the top of it, there's all these headers. It put a custom header in place. And when that custom header then made it into their Ironport appliance setup, this header triggered it to go into a junk queue. So nobody was watching because the mail was going into a junk queue where it was designed. I think the interesting thing here to me is we're talking about an incredibly complex COEX installation designed to be really, really redundant. You know, we didn't even talk about the exchange redundancy here, the iron port redundancy. There was redundancy on top of redundancy, but ultimately the complexity is what really did this in. You know, the fact that such a small change could apply a header, that header then made iron port do something different. In these environments, you really have to keep your eyes open for what is happening. You know, what change and what's it going to do down the road is I think one of the biggest things that the message, you know, so far to me.
Yeah, there's complexity in the COEX environment, but as well in the overall environment. Like every pieces of that puzzle can have an impact there.
And then this one was probably the most complicated that I've ever come across. I haven't seen anything like it, but a company that really took the Domino being a development platform, as I said, you know, to heart. They had customized, you know, the Domino environment to a level I've never seen. They, you know, in Domino you've got these things that are called server tasks. They're like a Windows service. It's something that runs on the server is the most basic way I can, you know, phrase this, but we started getting reports of mail disappearing, and the vice president sent mail, and it never made it to anybody, including a company-wide announcement. It was just poof, gone. And so we started to keep an eye on this, and at first, you know, that's part of the problem too. In a COEX migration, people aren't used to the Outlook client. They may have made a mistake. You know, you've got the human issue to deal with already. You've got to manage people as part of this, and you know, a lot of really great technical teams aren't that great at managing the people. Running a Domino migration takes a combination of technical skill and people skills, if you will, too. I always, you know, kind of look at it as we have to keep our political capital for when something goes wrong. This case used up any political capital by the time we were there, because, you know, company-wide message leaving a vice president that never made it, you know, they're looking at everything. Everything is suspect, and every tiny thing that a user said now became a scenario of, we need to look at this to see if this is really happening. And we did, and ultimately we chased this down. It was a high availability environment, not as big as the previous example, so not as many servers, not as many installs. Off the top of my head, I guess two sets of installations, but there were a lot of paths from Domino to Exchange, you know, through Coexistence, and we really had to work through these paths to try to determine what was going wrong. And ultimately, it was a custom-written server task on one, you know, Domino server. So one of these custom apps they wrote was clashing with a combination of the COEX required tasks and an antivirus task that was on there. And when it acted up, we were able to ultimately determine that it acted up right after an antivirus definition update. But when it acted up, the mail was just gone. I mean, it got picked up from, you know, the coexistence queues and disappeared. It was never sent. It never went a single place. There was just no trace of it, which is it's the worst case scenario for mail flow.
Yeah, pretty big issue, you
know,
for email, yeah.
Yeah, queues are bad, but when mail is just gone, people lose a lot of faith in the environment really, really quickly. I think probably, you know, the last thing I mention, just in terms of what you know, the things I've seen go wrong. But again, notice, you know, none of these have to do with the software at all. You know, I could give examples where something went wrong with the software, but that's usually the easier one to manage. It's the complexity of these environments, and it's not always mail. You know, particularly when we talk about the cloud. So a large customer, you know, 50,000 seats, about halfway migrated, which halfway to me is always that stress point. I need COEX the most when half of my people are on one side and half of my people are on the other side. There's a decision on, you know, where do we route inbound internet mail. Usually it takes place at that point. Some people do it at the beginning or the end. Sometimes they do it in the middle, but that is the biggest stress for the you know, actual coexistence environments. In this case, mail flow was beautiful. There were no problems, really happy. You know, all this custom Domino mail was traveling beautifully back and forth, except free busy stops. And it was you know, a configuration change rolled out to Office 365, well documented, put out there in advance, but it changed the way that Exchange Online at the time thought about identifying where a remote user was. So there's a natural or an automatic sequence in terms of when I go to do an availability lookup, I check, is it local? If it's not local, then I look to see, you know, do I have an inter-org connector for it? And if I don't find one of those, then I move down to the next step and the next step. That process that we have now was not always in place. So what happened is a new set of functionality was coming in, and the way that the environment was configured wasn't prepped for it. And so initially the changes started rolling out. I don't recall if you know, there were any users that were on first release. You know, I don't remember the specifics. I just remember it was a big enough environment that it didn't hit every mailbox the same day. And so we were busy, you know, kind of digging into this and looking at it as the problem was getting worse and worse. And it really ultimately grew to where it was everybody, and there was a complete outage. But, you know, there were several days, if not a week, of you know, tickets and complaints beforehand that became difficult to solve because it worked for some people and not for others. Again, unrelated to Mailflow. Mailflow was happy. This was solely someone not being able to make a new calendar invite and see, you know, if the person who's still in Domino is actually open for a meeting.
Yes, it's not only the email and not only the coexistence platform breaking. Like there can be external change to it that can happen. So can we prevent these issues that we've seen? We've seen it can be the COEX, it can be the environment, it can be the configuration. Can we prevent these issues that we've seen, Gary?
In my opinion, no. and again, you know, when I make that statement, that this is, yes, there are a million things we can do. And I did a lot of Domino migrations. Quite honestly, you know, the cases I put out there were before I started using GSX. You know, you do the best that you can, but you're always keeping your eye on these environments. And the problem is there are so many moving pieces in so many places that it is, you know, prevent can be very difficult. You know, we've got to strike a balance between complexity and reliability. That's the best we can do. Building, you know, I had a very precise method for building servers when I would do it, building the environments, you know, monitoring the config the best I could. But ultimately, like I said, this is how I met GSX. I came to GSX because I needed, you know, some functionality that you know, our software has. I came as a customer, I mean, that I couldn't get anywhere else. So, you know, I would say that we can't prevent all issues, and mathematically, that's a true statement. I don't, you know, anyone who's done these migrations is well aware of the fact, these large, complex ones, that there's a lot go in here and a lot can go wrong. We begin our migrations, you know, all the customers I referenced would say the migrations went fantastic. We were able to solve the problems, we were able to get there, we set the right expectations from day one, but there are other places too I would have loved to use that political capital, not on outages per se. So, you know, what GSX does that you know, we really, you know, at the time until I bumped into GSX at a conference, GSX has the ability to make sure that the mail flow and that, you know, the FreeBusy is working end to end in both directions. So to me, understanding that things will go wrong and that's okay. You know, as I work with my team here now, I'm all about trying to help people understand that nothing's perfect. We just need to make sure that we have the right controls, restraints, alerts in place so that we can handle this in a really efficient fashion when something pops up. That's what you know, GSX and what our coexistence package does. You know, we have the ability to run end-to-end mail flow tests. So I send a message from Domino. I let it go through coexistence. I let it come out the other side of Microsoft Exchange and I pick it up. And not just you know, any scenario like that. We can drop the mail off in different locations. There's a lot we can do to make sure that every single server is being tested. So for those 16 you know, servers I mentioned for that one customer, we may do end-to-end testing, but we also do individual testing against every single system. Because knowing it's down is great. It's the first step, but now where do I go to fix it? And if you have 16 servers and one of them is sporadic, you don't know. In the case of that lost mail, If we had known immediately what server it was, it would have been shut down just like it was the second we realized that server was the cause. It got pulled. And then we kept working on, really digging into the true issue, but we pulled it right away. It's the kind of thing you can do when you have real alerting. If a mail message doesn't make it to Exchange in 5 minutes, the second time, or if you want a different threshold, you pick that. But in any of those cases, we're able to determine, is it making it? And you'll know. The pages will go out. The emails will go out. You'll be aware that there's a problem, and you'll be aware where the issue actually is.
Yeah, so let's take a look a little bit at, so we've explained the different use cases, different root cause have happened. We explained, we introduced a little bit how GSX performed this different end-to-end and the different component monitoring. So we wanted to recap a little bit here those different use cases and see how you could have prevented some of the impact, limited the impact in those cases, and how. So in the first use case, we've seen so mail was stuck in Domino. You mentioned. So here, because we do the end-to-end mail routing, you can configure really each of the mail flow paths that can happen in your environment to be monitored and have visibility on that. So GSX would alert you as soon as there's one of those mail flow that is not happening anymore or is not happening in the expected time frame. So you have expected SLA, and you are alerted as soon as there's something like that happens, so that you can identify which mail flow would not be working anymore. This, and also we're monitoring the different queues on the Domino server, the COEX server, or on Exchange as well, so that, and not only the default one, like the mail log box, but we can monitor any of the Domino queues. So really having visibility on each of those queues, and if they start having pending dead emails, they start to pile up, then you can be alerted, you can understand where that's happening. So
yeah, and in that first use case, the thing that was had, like you said, it's one that introduced me to GSX, but had we caught this in advance, as we did our due diligence and kind of dug in, we noticed that mail was taking longer and longer to make it through COEX before it started to queue terribly, because we took messages we knew were sent, checked the headers on one side, on the other, and we started to see it grow in how long it was taking for the mail to get delivered. We would have been out and notified before there was an outage if we had it in place beforehand, because we would have seen that the mail flow threshold was out of alignment and growing. We would have known.
Yeah, and a little bit similar in the second use case. So you mentioned the environment was highly available, but again, you need visibility not only on the end-to-end, but also on each of the components, because if the environment is complex, there are multiple servers running each of those components in high availability. One of the components can break, and that can have an impact. And well, sometimes it's hard to be aware of it immediately. You start to impact a lot of users, so it's important to monitor each of those queues, but also to check the replication itself. Like you mentioned, some of those COEX systems. Yeah,
and in these big COEX clusters, you can have a functionality that replicates from one server to another to make everything work properly. There's a lot more to look at than you might realize. It's not only mail flow and calendaring. That may be what the user gets. There's a lot of real Domino functionality in the background that happens to make that work. The other thing too on the external mail queue, and although it's not necessarily related to this particular discussion, we're the only vendor that really does iron port monitoring to a deep level as well. So
yes.
That case is actually even better, because we could have monitored into Domino, into Exchange, because we watched the Exchange queues, into the iron port queues, and then picked it up in 365.
No, indeed, very good call out. And then, so third use case, we saw the sporadic mail loss. Well, there again, there were multiple things involved, but you mentioned mostly it was a configuration change, and that happens a lot. And that's something that GSX will allow you to monitor as well, is the different change monitoring that can be in the notes INI, that can be in other places, server documents. So this, on top of all the components, so monitoring the specific Domino task that we mentioned was happening in that issue.
Yeah, and actually there's a great combination there that, again, these are the cases I called out because I know GSX would have fixed them when we bumped into them along the way. But in that particular one too, the fact we test every server, so we would have realized that server was an issue when mail wasn't going, but we would have known why. This particular antivirus product that was installed. I remember there was an update that went into the notes ini file that actually, referenced the new, definition files to use, and that's it's been years, it's off the top of my head, but knowing that change took place with change monitoring for the notes INI, then we lost mail on that server right afterwards. We would have known it was that server, and we would have known it was a change in the INI, and we would have had what the change was. We would have been led right to the source of this issue really quickly.
This and yeah, another feature similar is all the monitoring of the ACLs as well. We're mentioning sometimes those permissions, they can have a dramatic impact on the coexistence. And so then the fourth use cases that we've went through. So you said it's not only email, of course. FreeBSD lookups is huge. I mean, nowadays with the number of meetings, so it's very important to do those different lookups. So yes, GSX will do simulation. It's going to do actual FreeBSD lookups on specific users, and this on each part of the environment. So looking up directly on the COEX server, looking up on Office 365, or from the different perspective, from the Office 365 world to look up the status of the Domino user and test that through that coexistence system that is the one translating the FreeBSD status but to the other side of the world. So yes, so to recap, as you can see, the different end-to-end checks to simulate the mail routing, the different FreeBSD checks, doing the monitoring of each of the components, so the Domino server, the Windows server that can be involved, looking at the different queues, different tasks, different services that are running, looking at the different changes that can happen, changes to the configuration, like the nodes INI that we mentioned, looking at the changes in the permission, in the ACLs, ensuring the replication in between the different Domino servers, for example, that monitoring the Domino replication. So, so all those different checks really help provide visibility, help you prevent some of those failures scenarios, and limit their impact to all the different end users. So then we wanted to, of course, we're great on the coexistence monitoring, but really overall the GSX philosophy is on the end-to-end real-time monitoring. So there are multiple layers, especially here we're taking the example on Office 365. There are multiple layers in between Office 365 and the service that Microsoft provides to you and the actual end users. So that's what we like to explicit here. You can see the different users here at the bottom. You don't want them to be impacted by all those layers that exist in between their Outlook client that they use to perform different actions and the Office 365 service. The Office 365 service is great. It's highly available. It's secured. Its performance can be debatable, so you need to keep an eye on this. You need to keep an eye on each of those layers that can have an impact on the performance, that can also be point of failures for the different actions that we mentioned. So what we do as GSX is we have scenarios to simulate what the end users can do in their Outlook clients. So things like, of course, opening the mailbox, but also creating new items, creating an email, looking up somebody in the address list, creating a meeting with that colleague, look up specific attachments, below the attachments. So everything that you can do from your Outlook clients. And a lot of things can have impact on that. So we discussed the iron port. So different mail security appliances, anti-spam, anti-malware can have an impact. The authentication through federation system like ADFS, going through the proxy, the ADFS server, all the synchronization of the directories in between your on-prem and Azure AD. A lot of organizations, if not all, have still at least one Exchange server on-premise to act as a gateway. So it's important to monitor those different components in the infrastructure. So just maybe to summarize a little bit the key feature on the GSX Coexist. So we went through different use cases. You've seen the different features that GSX offers to prevent and limit those impacts in terms of failures or impact on that performance. So just to do a recap, really, the philosophy at GSX has always been to really test the end user. Testing components is great, but you need to have visibility on what's the actual experience for the end users in real time and wherever those end users are. So if they are in multiple locations, it's not going to be the same experience for a user in New York than in Paris, that in Shanghai. So you need to have visibility in each of those locations. You need to be able to diagnose those issues, investigate, and so you need to understand the impact of the different components, as we've seen, the impact of the network as well. We're able to monitor any version of Domino servers, of Exchange servers, that includes Office 365. Because we monitor really that end user experience, we're compatible with any version of those systems. And in terms of component monitoring, we'll be able to do any version for Domino and Exchange as well. The troubleshooting, we can go in a more in-depth demo if you're interested, and we can show you, but we gather all of those different checks and all that information in a single dashboard so that you can understand and drill down when there are issues that impact specific services and drill down to what components are impacting those. As Gary mentioned, there's really two packages out there for coexistence. We do support both in what we've covered today, and we'll be able to, of course, the different end-to-end scenarios for both, but also the components. So specific components on the binary tree servers, on the Quest servers that will ensure the coexistence. And of course, if anything happens, there's a powerful alerting engine that is part of GSX that will be able to alert you by email, but of course by other means, SNMP traps, text messages, so that you can know when there's an issue as soon as it's happening, so that you can take action immediately to prevent that issue from impacting all the different end users. So just for those of you that don't know GSX, we wanted to introduce a little bit ourselves. So we've been doing monitoring and reporting for 20 years now. We actually started in the ABM space, monitoring Domino servers, but from the beginning, we've always focused on testing that end user experience. So the first monitoring that we were doing was already through that Lotus Notes clients accessing the different Domino servers, and now we've evolved to the Microsoft and Office 365. So that's why we're really the best tool to monitor those two environments. As you can see, we have offices throughout the world that ensures a 24/7 support since we have offices in the different time zones. We are a Microsoft and IBM partner, so we keep up to date with the different tools there. And we have around 600 customers now in about 40 different countries throughout the globe. Just to give you some ideas of our references, there's really no specific vertical. It's really, there are different environments, different complexity, different size, but where you need to have visibility on the messaging and the collaboration environment. So you can recognize some large names here, some smaller entities, but a lot in the financial, insurance, government as well, and manufacturing references. And so just to recap on who we are and our expertise, so as you've seen, so 20 years in the monitoring and reporting space, so started on IBM and now also on the Microsoft and Office 365. We are up to date and keep testing latest release on the Office 365 and Exchange part as well, so we're always a step in advance there. We do have different teams in each of the offices to provide support, technical help, and we'll be happy to schedule maybe a specific call with you to discuss more in depth your needs and see how GSX can help you. So thanks for attending. We'll now take any questions that might have happened during the session, or if you have any question, feel free to ask them now, and we'll be glad to answer. So one question that has been asked, and maybe Gary can help. It's on the licensing for for what we discussed today, so for GSX and especially on that Coexist package.
Yeah, and I think the key word there probably is package. The way that these environments can go, there are a lot of systems that can be involved, a lot of users, a lot of servers, maybe Exchange servers. It's too much to try to figure out when it's solving one tactical purpose. So we built it as a fixed price package. You know, I'd recommend just reaching out to sales. You can get you know, depending upon, there's just a couple of very, you know, minor tier variations, but effectively it's a fixed price. It'll include configuration because that varies heavily. Every COEX environment has been custom tailored, so we have to help configure to make sure that everything works. But it's not, you know, it's not something where you've got to go audit your environment to determine, you know, what this is going to cost.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think we're a few minutes late already anyway, so if you do have any questions, please reach out to us. We'll be glad to take your questions. Or if you'd like to go a bit more in depth, talk about your environment, about the coexistence that you're planning or is happening in your environment, please let us know. We'll be glad to have a discussion and focus on your needs. So thanks everyone. This is the end of the webinar. Thanks everybody for attending. Short survey should pop up on your screen. Please fill it in, and if you have any questions, feel free to send us to us. Thank you.